Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're diving into a company called Tempus AI. We've been hearing a lot about them lately and thought it'd be a good idea to, take a closer look and, give everyone an idea of what they're all about, especially for those of you thinking about investing in this company.
Sounds good to me. We've got some interesting stuff to cover, including some recent press releases about Tempus AI, and we're even going to take a look at a thread on Reddit, the R Tempus AI subreddit, to be exact. We'll see what individual investors are saying about the company, especially those 6-month price targets that are floating around out there.
Perfect. I'm excited to dig into this. This stock, has been making headlines, almost doubling in price since the beginning of the year. So what's driving this surge? I know there's been some big news and a high-profile investor who took notice.
Yeah, for sure. Let's start with their acquisition of Ambry Genetics. Tempus AI shelled out $600 million for them.
$600 million. Wow, that's a pretty significant acquisition.
It is, and it shows they're serious about expanding their reach. The deal involved $375 million in cash and $225 million in Tempus shares. And here's an interesting detail. A portion of those shares are under a lockup agreement, meaning they can't be sold right away.
So what does that tell us?
Well, lockup agreements often suggest confidence in the long-term prospects of the deal.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just about adding another company to their portfolio. There's a strategic element to it.
Absolutely. This acquisition gives Tempus AI a strong foothold in the genetic testing market, which could be a major growth area for them down the road.
Gotcha. Now, let's not forget they have a financial report coming up soon, right?
Right. They're releasing their Q4 and full year 2024 results on February 24th.
Okay. So before we get into those numbers, let's unpack what's fueled this stock's crazy ride recently. It's practically doubled in just a few weeks.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. There are three main factors we can point to. First, there's all the buzz surrounding Paul Pelosi's investment.
Ah, yes. Paul Pelosi, a pretty well-known investor. What did he do exactly?
He bought $100,000 worth of call options in Tempus AI.
For those who might not be familiar with call options, could you quickly break down what that means for someone who might be thinking of investing?
Sure. Basically, a call option gives you the right, but not the obligation, to buy a stock at a specific price by a certain date. So by buying those call options, Paul Pelosi is essentially betting the stock will climb even higher.
That's a pretty big vote of confidence from someone like him.
It is. And that kind of attention can really get other investors excited.
Makes sense. So it's not just about the Pelosi investment. There's more to the story, right?
Right. The second factor is their strategic partnership with the Institute for Follicular Lymphoma Innovation, or IFLI for short.
Okay, and what are they doing together?
They're teaming up to develop targeted therapies for follicular lymphoma. This aligns perfectly with Tempus AI's focus on precision medicine, using data and AI to create more personalized treatments.
Interesting. So they're not just buying companies, they're also actively working on new therapies.
Exactly. And the third factor fueling the surge is the positive sentiment we're seeing from financial analysts.
Give me an example.
Well, Piper Sandler, a pretty reputable firm, increased their target price for Tempus AI from $40 to $70.
Wow, that's a huge jump. It definitely shows they're bullish on the company's prospects.
They are. And with their financial report on the horizon, let's dive into what analysts and investors are expecting to see for Q4 and the full year 2024.
All right, what's the word on the street?
So Tempus AI already released some early revenue figures back in January. These are preliminary and unaudited, but they're estimating revenue of about $200 million for Q4 2024.
If I'm doing the math correctly, that's a 35% jump compared to last year, right?
You got it. And for the entire year, they're projecting around $693 million in revenue. That's a 30% increase compared to 2023.
Okay, so strong revenue growth is expected. But I got to ask, what about profitability? Are they projected to be in the black?
That's where things get a little more complicated. While their revenue is looking good, analysts are actually forecasting a loss for Q4. Specifically, they're predicting earnings per share, or EPS, of $9.39.
So not profitable just yet. But how big of a deal is that for someone thinking about investing?
Well, it's important to look at it in context. Tempus AI is pouring a lot of money into expansion and R&D. That can definitely affect short-term profitability, but it's often crucial for future growth.
Makes sense. So as an investor, you're not just looking at the immediate numbers, you're also considering their long-term strategy.
You got it. It's about evaluating whether those investments are smart and if they put the company in a good position for long-term success.
All right, so impressive revenue growth, but profitability is still a bit of a question mark.
Mhm.
What about the stock price itself? Is it sustainable at its current level?
Well, the stock is currently trading at $89.44, but the average 12-month price target set by analysts is quite a bit lower, at $58.55. This suggests some analysts think the stock might be a bit overvalued right now.
That's a pretty significant difference. Definitely makes you wonder what's going to happen to the price down the line. Now, I know we also wanted to check out what individual investors are saying. Specifically, there's a thread on the Tempus AI subreddit where people are sharing their 6-month price targets.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, there are some wildly different predictions.
What are some of the highlights?
Well, some people are super optimistic. Like one user just threw out $300 without much reasoning behind it.
Sounds about right for Reddit. Gotta love those bold predictions. But I'm sure there are also some more, well, level-headed perspectives.
Absolutely. One user who caught our eye is Feeling Blues 1979. They've been following Tempus AI since July of last year and seem to have a good grasp of the company.
Okay, so what are they saying?
Well, they start by pointing out that Tempus AI has never hit $90 per share before. Last year, during their IPO, the price topped out at $75, then tumbled all the way to $30 by December. They think that drop was likely due to post-IPO tax obligations. But based on this past data, they see anything under $40 as undervalued.
So they're bullish long-term, but also aware that the current price might be a bit inflated.
Exactly. They acknowledge the recent events, like Paul Pelosi's investment, which they believe kickstarted a new bull cycle for the stock, and all the positive news and partnerships. But they also caution that the current price range of $88 to $90 may not hold.
So do they think a price correction is coming?
They say there's a chance we might see a dip this week, or maybe a pump and dump situation after the earnings report. They're not sure about the short-term price ceiling, but they do say that if the stock breaks $100 and stays there, like Palantir did, things could get very interesting.
Interesting. Seems like there's a lot of potential for volatility in the near future. What's their investment strategy in all this uncertainty?
They're playing it smart. They're planning to buy on any major dips, especially if it drops below $60. And then their plan is to sell their holdings incrementally every time the price jumps by $20 above $100.
Classic buy low, sell high approach. They're optimistic, but also realistic about the company's potential.
I like it. Yeah, it's a good approach. They also bring up an interesting point about the company's valuation. They feel it's rising too fast, especially considering 2025 could be a big year for Tempus AI in terms of market cap growth.
What makes them think that?
They're seeing more and more integration of Tempus AI's tech into the healthcare system, which is a good sign, but they also realize there are inherent risks in such a fast-moving market.
What kind of risks?
Well, for one, new competitors could enter the scene. Some of the big healthcare companies are developing their own AI solutions, so Tempus AI isn't alone in this space. Plus, there's always the risk that their technology won't live up to the hype.
Competition is definitely something to keep in mind.
It is, and this user also points out an interesting observation about Tempus AI's public image. They think that, thanks to Paul Pelosi's investment, Tempus AI is starting to be seen as a meme stock, similar to Palantir.
Meme stock.
Yeah, you know those stocks that go viral on social media and see crazy price swings, often driven by hype rather than solid fundamentals.
Oh, I see.
It can be good or bad. It can attract a ton of new investors, but also lead to a lot of volatility and speculative trading, which isn't always sustainable.
A double-edged sword. So this meme stock label, it's not necessarily a good thing for Tempus AI in the long run.
Right. This user worries that it's adding to the stock's overvaluation. And they also bring up the broader economic climate. There are whispers of a potential U.S. market crash later this year, which could obviously affect Tempus AI, along with everything else.
Lots to consider, from the company itself to the overall market.
Definitely. This user is taking a broad view, looking beyond the financials and considering the market sentiment, competition, and even the macroeconomic environment. A smart way to approach investing.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a great overview of Tempus AI so far. We've learned about their acquisition, upcoming report, stock surge, and even gotten some insights from individual investors on Reddit.
We've only just scratched the surface, though.
Right. Up next, we're going to take a deeper look at their financials and analyze those market expectations. Hopefully, this will help you figure out if this company is the right investment for you. Stick around. Welcome back, everyone. We're in the thick of things with Tempus AI. Just heard some interesting perspectives from everyday investors on Reddit, but I'm ready to dig into the numbers now. Let's talk about their financials.
Let's do it. Cracking open the numbers is key to getting a clear picture of a company's health.
We know they're projecting around $200 million in revenue for Q4 of 2024, but What's the real story there? Is that a good sign or just one piece of the puzzle?
Right. Revenue's important, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't tell the whole story. It's just the money coming in, not factoring in what's going out. And that's where things get tricky with Tempus AI.
Because they're not turning a profit yet.
Exactly. Analysts are predicting a loss for Q4 with an estimated EPS of negative 39 cents, meaning they're spending more than they're making at the moment.
Okay, so for someone like me, a potential investor, should that be a red flag, or is it just par for the course with a company that's growing this fast?
It's actually pretty common, especially in fields like AI and healthcare that are rapidly evolving. Those industries often demand big investments up front in R&D, stuff that can affect short-term profits, but ultimately lays the foundation for future growth.
So it's about taking a long-term view, not just focusing on the immediate numbers.
Exactly. Investors are always looking ahead, trying to gauge where the company is headed and if they have a solid path to profitability. They want to see a plan for how those investments will pay off down the line.
Let's say I'm interested in Tempus AI's potential, but I'm a little hesitant about this lack of profit. What would you say to ease my worries?
I hear you. Those concerns are totally valid. It's wise to be cautious when a company isn't in the black yet. But let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. Tempus AI is operating in a market that's exploding right now, the AI healthcare market.
Right, and that market's only going to get bigger.
You got it. Tempus AI is strategically positioning themselves to lead the pack with their platform that combines AI, data, and cutting-edge tech to personalize cancer care. It's a strong value proposition that's clearly resonating with investors. You see it in their stock performance.
Their stock's been on fire, but is it sustainable? That seems to be the million-dollar question.
It is. And the answer will ultimately determine their long-term success. There's definitely hype surrounding Tempus AI right now, but we need to cut through the noise and get to the fundamentals. Some of that hype might be coming from things outside their core business, like all the attention from Paul Pelosi's investment and that whole meme stock phenomenon we talked about.
So how do we separate the hype from the substance?
Hmm.
What should investors be paying attention to when they're evaluating Tempus AI?
The key question is, can they deliver? Can they turn their technology into real results for patients and for investors?
That's what we'll be keeping an eye on as they release more data and show progress on their plans.
For sure. Tempus AI's story is still being written, but they're definitely a company to watch. But before we move on, there's another crucial element we need to consider:
What's that?
the competition. Tempus AI isn't playing in an empty field. There are other players in the AI healthcare space, and some of them are real heavy hitters.
True. Got to know your competition in any investment, right? So who are Tempus AI's main rivals? How do they stack up?
They're up against both established giants and hungry startups. On one side, you've got the tech behemoths like Google and IBM with tons of resources and AI know-how who are developing their own healthcare solutions. These guys have deep pockets and a long track record of innovation, making them tough competitors.
And on the other side, you have the more specialized startups, many of them homing in on specific areas within healthcare.
Yeah, it's a diverse and dynamic landscape out there. Some of these startups are creating AI-powered tools for early disease diagnosis. Others are focusing on drug discovery, using AI to speed up the development of new treatments. And some are even building systems for personalized treatment plans, tailoring therapies to individual patients based on their genetics and medical history.
Okay, so with so many players in the game, what sets Tempus AI apart? What's their unique advantage?
Their main strength lies in their laser focus on data. They've built this huge database of clinical and molecular data, and they use that to train their AI algorithms. This data-driven approach is really the core of their strategy.
So it's not just about having data, it's about knowing how to use it effectively.
Exactly. They're using this data to give oncologists more precise insights so they can make better treatment decisions for their patients. Plus, they're actively working on new targeted therapies with the goal of improving outcomes and maybe even finding cures for cancer.
That's a powerful mission. But those tech giants you mentioned, Google and IBM, they have access to mountains of data too, right?
They do, and that's a real challenge for Tempus AI. They've got to keep innovating and find ways to stand out. They can't afford to get complacent, especially with those big players breathing down their neck.
It's a constant race in the tech world to stay ahead. But it's not all about data and innovation, is it? It's also about execution. Can Tempus AI actually scale their operations and get their solutions out there in a way that makes sense both clinically and commercially?
Those are the key questions for investors. They need to figure out if Tempus AI has the operational muscle and business savvy to make their vision a reality.
And then there's the whole regulatory landscape. Healthcare is heavily regulated, and that can be a major hurdle for any company in this space.
Definitely. Navigating those regulations can be a real headache, slowing down their time to market and affecting their profitability.
So it's a complex situation with a lot to consider. Tempus AI faces obstacles, but there's also massive potential.
That's a fair assessment. The AI healthcare market is still in its early stages, and there's room for multiple winners. Tempus AI has a strong foundation, a compelling vision, and a talented team. But as with any investment, there are risks involved.
We've talked about those risks throughout this deep dive, from competition and valuation concerns to the overall economic outlook. Now, as we get closer to wrapping up, let's bring it back to you, our listeners. Thinking about everything we've discussed, what are your initial thoughts on Tempus AI?
Does this company fit with your investment goals and your risk tolerance? Are you okay with a company operating in a sector like AI healthcare, where there's high growth potential but also high risk?
That's something only you can decide. But we hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and insights you need to make a smart decision. Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing.
And as always, we encourage you to do your own research, talk to a financial advisor, and make choices that align with your own financial situation.